Dr. Jazz.
Yeah, it was a
Wow, wow,
beautiful
wow.
gig, man. I
Jazz.
mean,
Thank you. That was I love working with Simon. We just had a little bit of a reunion. He was at the NAMM show,
oh, seriously.
and
Oh, wow, beautiful.
I went to see Steve Weingart, who was playing at the Casio stand, and so Steve and I went because I knew Simon and I were going to meet at the Tama booth, so we all went together and had some good laughs and a nice reunion. So
Yeah.
very fond memories with our time together, and we'll do some more stuff in the future, no doubt.
Oh, man, you have to. I love that band. It's just
Yeah.
like it's so nice to hear in that context as well,
Well,
because
thanks. Yeah.
it's a different music than you play as a band leader, or
That's why, and that's
which I
that's what
love,
I
man. So
that's what I love about it because I would never, I don't write in that style, but
yeah.
I do enjoy playing it. That goes back to he and I first started working in about 1997, when his another Symbiosis record came out, and that guitar player Ray Russell couldn't do the tour,
Oh
so
yeah, yeah.
that's when that band formed, and I started working with him. And then I did a solo record called The Spoken and the Unspoken, and I
Yeah.
asked him to write a song. There's a track called Astral Fishing, just because just write me something like you would write, and then so we'll I don't know if it'll be a protocol type thing that we do together or another maybe a solo record of us collaborating. I don't know,
Yeah. It's
but
nice.
I know it'll be fun and I'll learn a lot. I mean, that guy has just got so much experience in the studio. It's just
Oh
a treat to
man.
treat to work
It's
with.
I did this talk. I mean, that's a thanks, Simon, by the way. He gave me your
Yeah.
email. So
Oh, okay,
because
cool.
we did this interview,
I got you.
and just the stories he has, like about Jeff Beck and all these guys. Did you ever ask him about this stuff? Like, I
Oh, of
mean, when you were on the
course,
road? Oh, okay.
endlessly. Yeah, he loved telling stories about
Okay.
Jeff and Pete and good Lord, he's played with all the great guitar players,
Everyone.
and
Yeah.
yeah, of course, with Luca, they're one of my biggest influences. So there's a lot of guitar history that he's worked with, and some mutual friends now. I'm really tight with Luke, and but yeah, I always enjoyed the stories of working with Jeff. Just so many. He used to marvel at how just hearing Jeff just noodling around on an electric guitar, but not even plugged in, the tone, even
Hmm.
like that was just so beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and obviously, and I didn't take that lightly, knowing who he had worked with, and if he's choosing me, I have some big shoes or a certain bar to
Definitely.
try to live up to. Of course, I'll never be those guys, but I just gotta,
Yeah.
be the best version of me I could be, and I learned a lot from him. Just his worth ethic, how he handled himself in the studio and on the live stage, and how to get things done in a
Hmm.
very methodical way, but in a not in a taskmaster way, but okay, we got work to do, let's go.
Yeah.
And so it helped me how to be a better band leader with my band in any studio situation. So
How
always
did he
always
find out
enjoy.
about you, by the way? I mean,
Well, okay, so the first time I worked with Simon, this was 1990. It was a NAMM show, 1993.
already. Oh, okay.
God, goes back a long way. So there was an idea that the Ibanez wanted to do a night of all their big, rock guitar players. So it was called the Axe Attack,
Okay.
and it was Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, Paul Gilbert, Reb Beach, Alex Skolnick, Sean Lane, who was briefly
Mm.
an Ibanez endorser. But they needed like a house band to back everybody up. And so they first went to Simon Phillips, and he agreed. They went to Gerald Veasley, who was playing in Weather Report,
Hmm.
and the main guy that I was working with at Ibanez at the time, a guy named Bill Comiskey, you know, threw my name in the hat as well. Andy's, I was still in Danger, but they knew of my solo material. My first record, Ear Ecstasy, hadn't come out
Yeah,
yet,
yeah.
but,
Oh,
but they
okay.
knew how I played, and that I had the ability to do fusion stuff. So Simon agreed to do it, but only on the idea that he and this band would back everybody else up, but then in between he would get to do some of his fusion material. You know,
Okay.
so not only did I get to play, with a lot of these other guitar players, but in between, I was playing this fusion stuff, like it was, what was to become protocol type material that he was already doing before that. And he just saw that, I came in, uber prepared and could play any of the tracks for any of the other guys. Like Satriani couldn't rehearse with the band, but okay, I know the songs. I got it. It's like, and so then, so that was 1993. The night went great. It was a wonderful night for me because if people only knew me from Danger Danger, they saw me in a very different light in that moment, much more of an adult type music, which is what I, I grew up as just a rock player, but then I got into a lot of jazz and loved fusion and was able to do a lot of different things. Just as my career path was blossoming, I just realized just embrace everything so you can say yes, so you can say, I'll country gig. Yes, I bet, I'll get a Telecaster, whatever I got to do. So yeah, the opportunity with Simon for that moment was great, and I treated it like I would any other gig. I was more than prepared coming in to do the best I could do. And so it was just 4 years later when, like I say, he had done a record, and his main guitar player for years was a guy named Ray Russell.
Ray Russell, yeah.
An amazing, kind of UK-based session guy, but had done a lot of work with Simon, but he couldn't do the tour for whatever personal reasons. And so Simon, what about Andy? He could play my tub. He comes in prepared, and so that's just, was an easy call for him to make, and absolutely, let's go.
Interesting.
So that's the lesson, and that gig led me to Olivia Newton John in the most bizarre way, because when people see how you work, and if you respect the music, and you're a relatively sane human to get along with on the road.
That's important. Yeah.
We can all be tested. Let's just say I'm no angel, but no, it's what should be such an easy thing to do. Do the work, don't be a jerk to people, be cool with people. But that all adds up to a career eventually, just by every gig you do. I mean, even if it's just a local gig with guys down at the pub, if there's songs to learn, if there's, just, man, do the best you can do. Cause it truly is. That's the most important gig at that moment. There's, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You can't change whatever you did the days before. So why not treat everything, obviously within reason, but yeah, you got to just treat it with the respect of, I don't want to let myself down to start with, it's a very selfish thing. Yeah. Anything I'm a part of, how can I make this as good as it can be, whether it's by knowing the material or knowing when not to play, having that instinct of, maybe my volume pot is my friend at this point, and just let's just turn that down, or whatever it might be. But that just adds up, and my relationship with Simon is a prime example of that there was this one gig, and that led to not only multiple records with him and tours, but then him very, very easily recommending me when he was asked by his management, Fitzgerald Hartley, Olivia needs a guitar player. Who can do it? Well, this guy, Andy. Hey, call Andy, And that led to 15 years of, like, the biggest part of my income.
Well, yeah.
And she was perfect to work with, A, because I loved her. And B, she would just do little bits, she'd do, 3 weeks here, 4 weeks there. And so I still had time to do Simon's band and still
band leading,
and then have my own career. So those are such treasured gigs because I loved her, loved the music, I had respect for the music. It's, and it's all over the map. Some was country, some was pop. Yeah. But she loved playing standards, and so it was a lot of fun. It was just a great group of people to be with. So that made that another very fond association.
Speaking of Simon, I wanted to ask you, how did you cope with Simon's rhythms? Because when I saw the band live, man, you seem to glide effortlessly over whatever 17 or whatever he's playing, and
a lot of it's just. I don't know what to even call it, faith and luck. There's because I don't this is you can quote me on this. I don't like to think. I don't want to have to be too conscious of counting and form. I like to feel things, so I really try to internalize as much as I can. But with Simon's music, it's dangerous because there's songs in 15, 16, 11, 16, all kinds of things where, maybe can we just play a shuffle, but there's a beauty to that. And again, part of my education and part of my, just more overall awareness of more, certainly adult chords. He writes in a fashion to where there's a lot of harmonies that he writes where there's no third. It's a lot of stacked
Okay.
fourths.
Interesting.
And so that takes away my superpower. My superpower is melody, and it's all revolving around thirds. It's all kind of, it's how I
Intervallic kind of, yeah.
it's how I hear harmony and how I hear melodies. And a lot of his music, not only did he take away my foundation of regular time, and even if it's in 15/16, then he's playing over the bar line, and you
Yeah,
just got
exactly. Yeah.
heads up. But also harmonically, there's some stuff where I still really don't know what to play over that chord. But there's a thing about, but that develops another instinct. That develops, okay, I have to navigate this in a way that's kind of foreign to me. So there were many moments in the band where I felt like, man, I don't know. I don't think I'm playing this as well as this guy would or this guy would. But I do know that I brought a certain rock element to the band.
Oh man.
And I think that was beneficial in its own way. So, but yeah, again, I nothing but fondness for Simon and that material, just because it isn't what I normally do, and that's always helpful. That's always healthy. But it was always musical. His stuff can be very complex, but it's also very beautiful. You know, there's a lot of beauty to what he does, and the way he writes, he'll sit at the keyboard and just find what he's looking for. Then he would program, you know, all the, like the melodies and everything. I would get a demo MP3 or whatever and a chart. It would all be kind of there.
Okay.
Then open for interpretation, of course. So, but yeah, there would always just be these great melodies. All right, cool. This is, you know. But it's very different when somebody's writing on a keyboard than physically. You know.
Man, absolutely. Yeah.
Sometimes those intervals can be challenging. But anyway.
How do you write, by the way? I just had a student today. I mean, I've been teaching your music, some of your tunes to my students for years, and I just had a guy today, and we went through Electric Gypsy.
Okay.
What's your process when writing? I mean, that's a tricky tune because, you know, with all the harmonics and. But what's the process for you in writing, or especially that tune? Since
that's okay, yeah. So that was literally just written. The main theme, the opening riff, just came in a jam session. I used to live in New York when I was in Danger, and Casey, the keyboard player, basically it was the house that he grew up in. His father had lived there, and eventually moved. But Casey's brother Carl, older brother Carl, lived there, and he was a really great drummer. And so every now and then we'd have jam sessions, and I was reading this book about Jimi Hendrix called Electric Gypsy. Ta-da!
Yeah, it's very Hendrixy. Yeah,
it's extremely. It was meant to be very, very much kind of a tip of the hat to him. And I was reading this book, so I was really absorbing. It was, to me, it was, because this is back in the early '90s. It was kind of the first book that really seemed to capture his spirit. I don't know why that was my instinct, but you know, it really was a nice read, and learning about his, you know. His ethnicity being part American Indian, you know, not just the African American experience. So talk about a lot of stuff, you know, and so I was just in that spirit, and that riff just kind of came. And then I would have gotten, during that time I was coming back to Texas quite a bit. I was living in New York in Danger. We'd have a break. I might come back to Texas to record with my band, you know, who I'd been with since 1988. Still working with Mike Dane, the original bass player. Exactly. Since that time. So it was actually sitting with Mike. I knew it was a strong riff, but I thought maybe this is a vocal tune. He's like, no. This is it. This is fine, you know. So there's some songs like that. My impression of that song in general, after recording it and writing it, I thought, what a nice simple little guitar piece, you know. It just seems very simple. And then as years went by, and then of course with the advent of YouTube, and I started seeing a lot of people covering it, which again, you know, the fact that anybody was interested enough to learn one of my songs was uber humbling. But then I kept seeing everybody not really getting it. And I don't say that in a braggadocious
no, but
way.
it's a tricky tune. I mean,
but what I mean, it made me appreciate that even if I'm playing something very, if it's on paper, it's very simple, but the dynamics and the articulation and the feel and the intention behind each note, it took me a long time to kind of see it from a distance and go, oh, okay, well, maybe there's a bit more to this than I realized. It was just me playing, you know, as I went along. But that one, I can't really cite any particular writing process. It was just a riff that appeared, and but you have to recognize those things when they happen. Yeah. You know, sometimes, and that's the way a lot of my songs will start, is if I'm just kind of practicing first thing in the moment. I might recognize a melody if I'm improvising, or I might recognize a couple of chords. And it's a lot of times it's before the brain kicks in too much.
Yeah,
I love
that's
that.
better.
Call it divine intervention, or just I actually developed a course in this called Melodic Muse.
Hmm.
Man, I put that on silent. I swear I did. I developed a course called Melodic Muse to try to address where do songs come from, and it truly is, I think, can be traced to all the music that we've loved and that we've learned throughout our lives, and at least that's the foundation, because you've got all these ideas and these things that have appealed to you, and if you've taken the time to have a relationship with your instrument to where you can hear something similar and bring it to fruition, whether it's conscious or not. You have to be careful because you don't want to plagiarize. But there's a lot of things that I know are driven, and I can point to certain moments in some of my songs. Well,
Sure.
I know why I wanted to hear that, because a lot of it for me is kind of question answer. If I hear this note over this chord at this particular time, it's like my instinct kind of knows what I'd like to hear next. I might avoid that, or I might go directly into the light. I might go, there it is. So it becomes kind of a game, and just seeing where things can go. I've been writing a lot of solo, very simple, simple solo pieces. I'm trying to correct myself along the way. These little solo pieces, like that song "Here Lies the Heart,"
Yeah.
that I wrote in honor of Chopin. I just love to have a simple melody, but I do like to go places. I like a lot of modulation, but that comes from all my favorite composers. Chopin being a prime example. John Lennon being, a wonderful. He's wonderful at having a one note melodic line, but changing harmony around letting the chords do the work. Like Lucy in the Sky is a prime example.
The Beatles also. I mean,
Da, da,
everything.
da, 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 da. Yeah, it's so but that's how each of us kind of find our personal voice, not only as an improviser, but as a writer. And to me, it's literally the same thing. There's a great, I've mentioned this in some other interviews, but there's this wonderful film where Harry Evans, it's Bill Evans, the great jazz piano player. Harry Evans is interviewing his brother Bill Evans in Baton Rouge, where Harry is a jazz teacher. And it's on camera. It's black and white. It's a film. Steve Allen is the host and narrates. So, but it's Harry Evans asking Bill about the process of jazz, learning jazz and improvisation. And Bill says the deepest thing, and this is why I realized that that improvisation is the same as composition. We're literally, for me, the way I interpret it is like we're just wanting to, we're playing or writing what we'd like to hear. We're trying. It's a very selfish thing. It's like, wow, this is the solo I wish I was hearing, or I wish I was hearing me play. Of course, meaning I would like to sound as great as all my heroes. You never do, but you reach for it. But it's the same as composition. But his comment was, in jazz, a minute's music takes a minute's time, where in composition, a minute's music could take a year.
Yep.
Think about, all the great composers. Some things happen very instantly. And the same is with me. Sometimes these things just come, or sometimes it's like, I got to work at it, and it's maybe takes a bit of time, and I might keep coming back to a piece. The good ones, and a lot of composers will say this, a lot of the really good tunes, the natural ones, just kind of seem to happen.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You can stay out of your way before you think too much, before theory or any kind of preconceptions come in. Well, what do you want to hear? Because that's the most important tool is the ear. And that's why I call the process, that instinct, I had to coin a phrase because nothing addressed it, because there's the intellect. I can play that B flat over that A7, and boy, it's going to have this wonderful flat 9 diminished quality. It's going to make me feel something, and I can tell you that. But but if I've gotten to that note through the ears and that musical memory, I call it the aurelect, which is kind of
That's a good one. Yeah.
Aurelect. So that natural inclination. Paul McCartney is a strong example of this, and Lennon too. They were such great writers. They know nothing about theory. They just learned a ton of songs. And so there's so much evidence. Of course, Paul McCartney's melodic work is well documented, but there's all kinds. I'm a bit of a Beatle maniac, and I've heard every snippet and outtake or in a film where he's just improvising a melody or whistling. It's always really, really pretty amazing. There's this one moment on the Beatles Anthology 3 where he's teaching Billy Preston what he'd like on She Came In Through the Bathroom Window.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, maybe he's and he just improvises this line. It's like, that should have been in the record. That's beautiful. And he's just off the top of his head, but it's that what he's held on to, what he's absorbed. And those guys were voracious. It wasn't just all the pop, but show tunes, and then they got into avant-garde, and there was some jazz, and and so that's how we become us. It's really what you love and what you take in. You know, if you're only obsessing about one composer or one musician, you know, you might, if your goal is to be as much like them as possible, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I know some people that, you know, boy, Stevie Ray Vaughan's their guy, and that's what they're going to do. And that's cool. If that's what feeds their soul and makes them happy, and that's really all that matters. Yeah. You know, life is about just what makes you happy. But for those, you know, of us that strive to, you know, hopefully have something to offer of our own, then that's the way. It's just like, what else can I learn about? And I'm always, you know, I go down paths. For a while there, I was only listening to oldies on the Tom Petty Buried Treasure show, where he plays all these 50s and 60s R&B, blues. But now, you know, I'm back listening to jazz. I heard a track. So, you know, I'll go down these paths. I'll get into West, you know, I'll go hardcore into West.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, I'm listening a lot to Jonathan Kreisberg right now.
Man, he's amazing, man.
Really great tone, great playing. So I've known the name, so I'm embarrassed to say that, you know, because I'm a George Benson, West, Barney Kessel. I mean, when I think jazz guitar, and of course then Metheny, a later iteration. But I'm aware of a lot of other cats that have come up, you know, with these same influences. But sometimes I just stick to my original heroes. But I had the jazz channel on my XM Sirius the other day. That's normally on the Tom Petty Buried Treasure. I go to Real Jazz and there was it was Dr. Lonnie Smith, the great B3 player. There's a live track. I think it might be a Clifford Brown song, or maybe I might have that wrong, but it's called Up Jump Spring. And it was Jonathan Kreisberg. And he just played the most beautiful melodies. You know, I could hear a bit of Metheny in there. I could hear some influences, but it was very much him. Yeah,
he's got a sound of his own. Yeah, definitely.
He does, and with a very beautiful tone. And then I went to the first track. I you know, of course, I Shazammed. I thought, okay, what record is this on? The first track, called Juju, it's got some great stuff.
Wayne Shorter. Yeah, that one.
And a wonderful version of 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, where he gets a bit of gain on that 175, and then he hits like this. I call it the steel drum patch. It must be a Pog with the octave above and below. But man, he's killing. He sounds so great. And so I'm in there picking up a few lines. You know, it's like, all right, I want some of that.
That's beautiful, man.
No, I love that. But it's also because it's always changing. I'll just get in a mood, and then I'll obsess about something. But it's that contrapuntal. You know, it could be. Yeah, because again, we went from Muddy Waters and the next day I'm listening to Jonathan, and there's such huge beauty in both of them, you know. Yeah.
You mentioned Wes and Barney and those guys, like the old school guys. Did you then learn that stuff? Like,
oh, absolutely, yeah. I can swing, man. I don't have a jazz box here, but no, Barney. So when I started when I was about 5, just kind of learning little simple things on my own. But when I was 16, I got my first teacher, because I was already playing professionally. And so, but he was teaching me how to read, you know, just read single notes. There was this really antiquated system called the Oahu guitar method literally from the 40s. And it started off notes on the treble string and very simple. But he saw, I mean, I was already playing in clubs. I was a real solid rock player at 16. But he played exactly like Barney Kessel. That was his guy. So he just started loaning me records. Like, here's Barney with Shelly Manne and Ray Brown, like Pole Winners. And then he, you know, a bit of Joe Pass, Howard Roberts, Oscar Peterson piano. And so it's like, this is amazing. How do these guys know what notes to play? So he would give me it was an 80 week series of these reading lessons. He would give me one of those, but then he would write changes out to a jazz standard: Satin Doll, All the Things You Are, Autumn Leaves, each week. And he had written a chord book that I still have to this day. It's the complete opposite of the Ted Green book. It had like, here's everything in the key of G. Here's every G13 you're going to use. Here's every G7 you're going to use. Here's every G7 natural 13 flat 9 you're going to use. And then the circle of fifths and how to navigate and play these in different inversions. And so it was up to me to learn the chords, memorize, you know. So it started tuning my ears in. And so to have Barney Kessel Jr., you know, that really kind of from that same, he was from that same era. His name's Ron Pritchett. He's still around. He's in his 80s. And I love him dearly because he saw my potential and thought, well, I need to nurture that. And it changed my life because, you know, it opened up my ears to much different music than, you know, 70s arena rock that I was playing in my cover bands. But I loved it just as much. Like, man, I want to know how to do this. So yeah, so all those guys, and they're still heroes. And man, I just had the unbelievable blessing of getting to hang quite a bit with George Benson this last couple of months.
Oh, really? Oh, man.
So there was a huge guitar camp that just happened. It's the first time George has ever done this. The Dreamcatcher Company, who I've done a master class camps with, you know, a bunch with Paul Gilbert and some with Vi and Satriani. George Benson, you know, agreed to do one. So they got Tommy Emmanuel, Lee Ritenour, John Schofield, Stanley Clark, Corey Wong was there. Did I mention Steve Lukather? Did I mention? Oh, wow. I'm missing some people. Al Di Meola, and me. Like, you know,
a nice company, man.
Yeah. Well, how did I get this gig? But now through Ibanez, I've met George, and I've gotten autographs from him on my "It's Uptown" record, one of my favorite early George Benson records. And I've met him, you know, probably 7-8 times over the years. But now he's heard me play. He especially came to make sure he saw the show that I did in one of the nights at this camp. And man, he's just the sweetest guy and loves to just hang. And I got to ask him so much. You know, did you know he's a huge Barney fan? I never heard him talk about it like this.
Really?
Of course, Charlie Christian is ground zero, and of course Wes. And there's, if you haven't read George's book called what's it called? But it's his autobiography.
Really, I don't know.
It's my favorite book I've read, an autobiography of a jazz musician, because it's George for one. But he tells a wonderful story. Like, he gets to New York and he's 19. He's probably in the Jack McDuff band, and he just thinks, man, he's the hottest dude. He's like, man, I got it going on in New York City. He finishes his set. He goes down the street to another club, and there's this little scrawny Italian kid with this big guitar. It's Pat Martino. And he goes,
yeah.
Oh shit, you know. So, but in the book, it's like it's written exactly like he's talking to you. You hear his voice leap off the page. So then finally, you know, his manager, Stephanie Gonzalez, been with him forever. She's the one she's kind of a fan of mine. She made sure that I got to be part of this camp because she knew how much I revere George. And she made sure that he was there when I played my concert, you know. And then, so now when I see Joe, I just saw him at the NAMM show, and he was the sweetest. I mean, he's very caring and nurturing and respectful, and is a fan of all the other cats, you know. There's another great player that was there named Isaiah Sharkey. He was kind of a younger guy, African-American guy from Chicago. And man, he's got all the George stuff, plays great, but has his own thing. You know, he's got a great voice, and he's doing some great funky soul tracks. So check out Isaiah Sharkey.
I have to check him out.
So he, in the first night, you know, I had played, and George is just hanging out, having a Chardonnay, and it's just Isaiah on one side, and I'm on the other. And George is holding court, just telling stories, and every now and then I look over at Isaiah. He's looking at me, and we're like, "Can you believe this is happening?" You know. But we start talking. I bring up Barney. He says, "Oh man, Barney, you would kick my ass every night." And so they had, I guess, he intimated that they had toured together for a little bit, sometime maybe in the later '60s. Oh. So I need to find out more about that, because he always talks about these other cats, but Barney was also, man, he'd kick your butt every night.
He was incredible, yeah.
It was nice to hear, you know, because he was doing incredible stuff that, you know, but Barney gets overlooked a bit sometimes. But I'm fond of him because he was kind of my entry into jazz. But I grew into really digging, you know, George and Wes and the guys with that particular time feel.
Yeah.
You know, there's a solo. I think one of my favorite moments for George, there was a record called Bad Benson.
Sure, yeah.
And no sooner said than done.
Yeah.
So, and I, of course, one of the many things I got to ask George in our recent hangs was, you know, man, what do you? That's one of my favorite tracks. Oh, it's one of my favorite tracks too. He says that whole record we did in a day. I'm like, of course you did. Of course you did. You know, George Benson. But that's the great. Oh man, who's the guy on rhythm guitar on that? But he did talk about not Cornell, but
no, Phil Upchurch.
Phil Upchurch, my
Yeah.
God, the rhythm guitar
Amazing guy.
playing.
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
on take 5, right?
Oh man.
No, so but he's going to me, man. And I said, but and I was sure it was Ron Carter, but who's on drums? He's like, oh man, it's that young kid. It was that kid from Rochester. Who's that drummer from Rochester? Oh yeah, Steve Gadd.
Yeah.
No wonder that record just feels incredible. But he said they did that in a day.
Wow.
I mean, just that solo he plays on there, I just marvel at every time. It's just got everything I want to hear. It's got the grease, it's got the grooves, it's got the time feel. But I was happy to hear that he loved that track too. You know.
Amazing, man. Yeah, I didn't know that about you. I mean, because when I listen to your playing, I mean, only through Simon, obviously you hear you're navigating through complex harmony and stuff, but I didn't know that. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So there's only little bits of evidence out there of me playing straight ahead, but I can't tell. I mean, in everything that I do, the jazz is in there because the time that you spend, because you have to navigate the changes. You can't just go, oh, I'm in the key of A, I'm going to shred an A, and that's what a lot of rock players do, and they can do it at a very high level, but it's very different. You know, if there are changes involved and somebody's threading that needle, you know. So there's a lot that I got just how to navigate a 2-5-1. It's all about the sevenths and thirds, and so the more I did that just influenced everything that I did melodically. So I've got the Beatle songwriting and the 60s pop foundation, but then that awareness, but then the feel. You know, incessantly listening to Charlie Parker and Cannonball.
Really?
I mean, a lot,
really?
You know, and that kind of swing and articulation, it's in everything that I do, though I'm not sitting there and playing you the Omni book, you know.
Sure.
I could at one time. I mean, you know, that was part of my path, and I absorbed a lot of that. Over the years, I wish I would have exercised the jazz muscle a lot more, but I do. Like, that's my first thing I do every day. I'll sit and play standards for an hour.
Really? Oh man, I didn't know. Wow.
I had the iReal book app, you know, where you can pick a standard and just have a platform to play over. It's usually all the things you are in a bossa, but you know, but it's a matter. It's part that, but there's a lot of rock players go, well, I want to, you know, and it was true with me too, because when Mike Stern came along. And to a degree, Matheny and Lukather, Carlton, if I mentioned Robin Ford. So all these guys that, you know, they were kind of, not Matheny, of course, but there was this rock, you know, kind of ethos. But like when I first heard Lukather, I went, oh, this is different.
Yeah,
this has it's all the energy in the rock and the time was so great, but there was this chromatic stuff happening. And then when I finally saw Mike Stern for the first time, it was right when the the Man with the Horn record came out in 1982, and Miles Davis was on Saturday Night Live. And Mike at the time was before he had the telly. It was his Strat, his 70 Strat, and it's etched in my memory to this day. You know, this scraggly kind of hippie. He was Fat Time back then. You know, Miles called him Fat Time.
Yep.
But really, actually, Mike would say mainly because his time was so fat, and I know this to be true. But what's this guy gonna do? And he started playing, and that my world just went zoom, because here's all this jazz I was listening to. Here's my Hendrix and rock and all the roots. I hadn't heard anybody put it together like that. I hadn't heard that. You know, there's fusion existed before Mike Stern on the guitar, no doubt. But at that moment, that's when I just got it. It's just this makes sense. It's all music. This all works. And so, of course, a huge, you know, Mike fan to this day. I adore him as a human and as a musician, of course.
You guys play together, right? Also.
Yeah, we've sat many times together, but we actually did play on stage it was me and Eric Johnson and Mike.
Oh man.
I mean, talk about. But here's the full circle, Samo. You'll appreciate this, because the song that they did on that Saturday Night Live program was called Jean Pierre, which is now a very famous. Everybody quotes it in every solo they play. Perhaps a bit too much, but all that to be said. So I had just gone. You know, Mike Stern and Eric Johnson did that record together. I forget what it was called, but anyway, they did a and they were on tour, and so I literally went to the theater where they were playing in Dallas just to say hello, because I'm friendly with both guys. And right as I'm getting ready to let them get it together, going to go play, Mike goes, "Oh, you want to play?" I'm like, "Just happen to have my guitar, you know, just happen to bring it." So they asked me to play. Well, we'll do Red House. Okay, great. So if you type our names in, hopefully the video still exists.
I have to check it out, man. Okay. Well.
We get on stage, and Anton Fig is the drummer, and Chris Marsh is on bass.
Mm-hmm.
They had like just a generic Fender Twin they pulled out from the truck, and I had my little, I don't know what I had. I had probably my JHS, AT pedal, and I didn't have my Echo, my Halo by then, but who knows what I brought. Very simple couple of pedals I plug in, and while I'm doing that, they're starting this groove, and I see Mike over talking to Anton. Then he comes back over and he says in my ear, "Hey man, do you know Jean-Pierre?" So watch the video. You see me almost fall over. I almost fall over because I can't believe this is a song I'm going to play with him, because that was the song that drew me to him and his playing. And then when we got the Man with the Horn record, there's that song called Fat Time.
Yep.
And God, I spent weeks trying to figure out some of those licks. Just such great chromaticism. But also he's a beautiful lyrical player, man. What Mike?
Oh man, the ballads.
He does on his ballads. There was a couple records ago where he played a couple of nylon string things with his females singing with him. It's just as deep as it gets. It's like you hear. I knew he and Matheny spent time together at Berkeley at one point, but there's definitely a similarity in some of that melodic direction. But boy, I love them both just as much. I mean, Matheny is another guy that is deeply ingrained in the way that I hear music, even though, again, I'm this rock guy. But if there's anything that sets me apart, if people are talking about my melodic type of ideas, it does come a lot from these other guys that you wouldn't say, oh, he's imitating Matheny. If you hear me with a warm neck pickup with the tone dialed down a bit, I'll start to play a bit like that, just because that's what I'm hearing. But it does infiltrate everything else in what I hope is a positive way. But yeah, so much love for all these people, man.
Amazing, man. Yeah, no, you have your sound and everything. Obviously, it's like as a composer and as a guitarist, and that's But I wouldn't see some of these guys that you mentioned now. I'm quite like, man, okay, that's really
again. There's only one. There's a song on my very first CD called Ear Ecstasy.
Yeah, I have that. Yeah.
There was one song on there called No More Goodbyes, and it was my attempt in 1988 to write a Matheny type song.
Okay, but
we end up sounding a lot more like Rush than the Pat Metheny group. But you'll hear a little bit of, I can hear a little bit of that, even though I'm playing on a solid body Plinky, through a solid state. Who knows what I was playing through? But I will keep working on the jazz, just because even if I'm not going out to do a straight ahead jazz gig, which I do sometimes, just very locally. Yeah. It informs everything that I do, and it helps everything. If I'm working on that kind of music, all my chops for whatever else I'm doing feel way better, and I'm just a happier guy, because if you're learning just little bits on a regular basis, it just helps you feel good about what you're doing, because I went through periods in my life where I wasn't regularly practicing. I was always playing, but if I got out of that habit of like, hey, what are you doing? Let's play some standards, or I started getting back into just making sure that I did that first thing every day. Yeah. And over time, it was hard to hear myself suck playing over changes, in the jazz setting. But the more I did it and saw those little bits of, I became a happier person. It was a major life lesson that I like to tell people about. Just man, honoring whatever gift that we have. And the gift is really our passion and our love for music. And not everybody has this intense joy and passion in their life about a particular thing. Yeah. And what a beautiful thing to be a part of, and to be able to put that back out into the world. If people resonate with that, that's my success, Yeah.
You gotta love it to spend so much. The other day, a student of mine asked me, like, how many hours you spend practicing. Right. I was like, shit, man, I don't know, 20,000? I don't know.
Yeah, no, they're looking for a deadline and a recipe. Yeah. Okay. I don't have much time. How can I be great? Well,
man, I don't know.
You'll never get there. And boy, but if you understand that loving the process is the key, and that also took me a lot of years to really realize. Being okay with not being who you would like to be, or who you wish you sounded more like, but and you get more comfortable with it if you're just dedicating that regular time to just being the best version of yourself. That's the key, but it took me, till I was in my 50s to start to figure that out, because it's real easy to feel less than. You know what I mean? It's like, even people that may overtly seem like they have huge egos, I guarantee you, deep behind that is a deep insecurity about, oh man, well this guy or Holdsworth. It's like,
Oh man,
you
I've
know,
spoken to so many people about
yeah,
Holdsworth,
yeah. It's
and he
just
was like, he played the best gig of his life, and he was like, man, I suck,
cry. He would be crying. He would be
Yeah.
like this.
Okay.
So,
Man, yeah.
and but there's a reason. That's part of the reason that he was who he was.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? But we have to find a healthy version of that. The only way that we're going to get better, the only way somebody gets to a level where other people might say, that guy's great, whoever it might be. Nobody had to tell them how much to practice. Those people weren't asking, how much did you practice? They were doing it because they loved it. I am definitely that way. I know that there's, plenty of others we could point to, but life happens sometimes too,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
And
of course. Yeah.
we get pulled in a lot of different directions. So sometimes it's kind of hard to maintain when you're in your, late teens, early 20s, or obviously much younger, but as you're crossing over into adulthood and responsibilities and gigging, it can take you off of that path of like, I remember standing on a dorm floor when I was studying jazz guitar at the University of Miami. I went there for
Oh, like
eight,
Martini's place, and yeah.
and the
Okay.
dregs formed there. That's what drew me down there, And so
Oh, wow.
my first 2 years, I studied classical guitar at the University of Evansville, Indiana, where I grew up. But I heard about Miami and thought, man, I would love to be able to go there. Somehow got lots of student loans, auditioned via cassette. I couldn't even afford to go down to audition.
Mm.
I did a very bad version of Satin Doll, and then I had a friend of mine do a backing track that sounded like No Sooner Said Than Done, the Benson track. I don't have a copy of it. I got to see if I can find the guy that did it with me. Anyway, long story short, we're standing on the dorm room floor, and somebody's reading an interview by Larry Carlton, and the ubiquitous, what advice do you have for young players, Larry? He goes, well, take advantage of that time when you're living at home because life happens. I'm like, what's he talking about? All I'm ever going to do is this. I'm just going to play guitar. Well, okay. Larry was right. Life happens. But you can always find that time, whatever your responsibilities are, if you love it enough. And again, just remembering that, man, just, embrace, I call it embrace the suck. You're going to suck, but every day, just play. I mean, do some work, but don't lose the fun,
Yeah.
I'll play a bit of scales and stuff on occasion. That it quickly always erodes into improvisation or writing, or like I say, playing along with backing tracks like the I Real book, because that's fun. I know I should be doing more exercise, and I'm trying to go over I still don't feel like I'm as strong as like arpeggiations all over the fretboard. If I've got a minor 7 flat 5, I'm getting better at it. I should be able to have all these options. And sometimes there's things that trip me up or diminished in general. It's still like this Achilles heel. So, but every day I'll go through a little bit of that, but then I'm just going to start playing because I know whatever time I have, I got to keep it fun too. Because if it turns into work and you're just doing nothing but disappointing yourself, that's not healthy either. So I guess it's all about balance. Yeah.
You mentioned your ecstasy. If you look back at that record,
Yeah.
how do you feel about it now? I mean,
Well,
compositionally, it's amazing. I think the tunes are beautiful, and
thank you. Well, I mean, for sure, I was just I had formed the Andy Timmons band in 1988. I got
already. Okay.
I got the Danger gig in 1988 based on the first demo tape that I made with the band. That song, It's Getting Better.
Yeah.
That's the very first instrumental I ever recorded.
Oh, wow.
It turned out to be in a really nice studio with a great engineer, and that's my band. That's Mitch Marine on drums. And that was the first time we actually played together in a studio. I brought the song in and we did the track. So that spawned the Andy Timmons band. But that cassette circulated, and that's how I got noticed by this band in New York, signed to Epic Records. And it was Danger, and it was very much a Bon Jovi wannabe pop hair band, And a great opportunity. Something that I've told in interviews, but you probably don't know, is that the very same time I got the offer for Danger, I got the offer to join Tower of Power.
No, really?
Very
Oh,
different
man.
situation. Well, Steve Grove was a tenor player that I went to school with at the University of Miami. They were coming through Dallas. Their guitar player, Danny Jacobs, was leaving to do a tour with Laura Branigan, who was a big pop star at the time. They needed a guitar player, and they were coming to Dallas. He said, "Hey, come sit in. We're playing at Dallas Alley. Learn Squib Cakes and What Is Hip." I went to the used record store, bought the records, learned them, went down, sat in with the band. And at the end of the night, Emilio was like, "Man, yeah, we love your playing. Can you come out to Oakland, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Well, I've got some stuff I got to work out. of course I was, it was one of those crossroads of like, here's, this MTV rock, childhood fantasy thing, or this badass funky fusion band. But I guess, I had to make a decision, and whether it was right or wrong, I don't know. But this is all to say that I was ready for either path. I would have loved something down the middle, because I would have been happy to, take a whatever fusion, kind of gig. But through that time with Danger, I'm just wanting to be more like, of course, the Ibanez guys. There was Joe and Steve and all the rockets, and Eric Johnson became a huge part of my inspiration.
Yeah, I love
And
Eric.
so I'm having to shake the image of, it's just this guy in this hair metal band. That's why that Axe Attack in 1993 was so important. People had no idea this other
What you
side
can
of
play,
it.
yeah,
The guy that could have joined, Tower of Power. Nobody would have guessed that.
interesting.
So by the time, it came to during Danger, I would consistently go back to Texas when we had breaks, and we'd record what I thought were demos. So when you hear songs like Carpe Diem, the original Cry for You, Busted Soda, I thought those were demos. So the lead tracks are literally this little Zoom 9002 digital.
Oh, really? Oh, man, okay.
Like the step up from the Rockman in the, whenever it was, the late 80s, early 90s. I thought, these are demos. We'll get a record deal, and then, we'll really do this right. Well, that kept happening. And I had about 11 or 12 songs, and I'd become really good friends with Reb Beach from Winger, amazing guitar player. And I'd given him my cassette. Hey, here's the solo stuff I'm working on. And, I'm gonna, redo all this. He goes, he listened to it, and he called me back and said, what are you talking about? This is your record. You're done. And so it kind of made me more comfortable with maybe that first instinct. And even if it's not sonically what I think all the recordings of the band sound great, but some of the lead guitar tracks are less than what I would try to do these days. But at the same time, it really was kind of here's the real me. You've seen me with Danger if you'd seen me.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know that part, and that was a very happy time for me, because I also enjoy just, it was really no different than being in Olivia's band. I want to do the best I can in that situation and play what's appropriate. What's the most musical thing I can do. And I got to shred a lot in Danger, no doubt. They gave me plenty of space. We would even do Groove or Die, my little Ingrid.
Really? Oh, man, really?
We would do that in my solo, section. What the young girls thought of that, who knows? A little bit of Cry for You every now and then. But yeah, Ecstasy to me, it was kind of my calling card of like, well, hey, this is the real me. That's why there's a country tune. There's a little bit of the Metheny type thing.
Yeah.
The last tune, there are no words. There's a little bit of, you could see where I was headed. I had a long way to go to develop, but yeah, some of the songs I'm quite proud of. Some of the writing's okay, but for where I was in 1994, not too shabby, not too shabby.
Yeah,
Well, that's the thing, and there's still, I'm sure there's still people that wish I shredded more like that all the time now. But I will say this as a shameless plug: I have a new record coming out in a couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, yeah, because you're going into Europe on
Yes,
tour, and I wanted to ask you whether you're recording, but now you just...
Sure. Segue.
Yeah, go on.
So okay, that's fine. So yeah, it's called Recovery. It comes out February 14th. I'm not sure when this will air, but yeah, it's so I say that my recordings have become more and more not subdued, but a little more refined. But there's a couple of tracks on the new record that I dig a little deeper back into a little bit of shred. So
okay.
Those that like to hear that, but then there's the typical kind of ballads that I like to write. But it's another record that I co-produced with Josh Smith, who did he actually produced the Electric Truth record, and now we're kind of calling this a co-production. But it's with his same crew: Lamar Carter on drums, Travis Carlton on bass, and Darren Johnson, who played with Miles for a while, on the keyboards. And it's a great crew. Alan Hertz, engineered and mixed it. But really proud of the songs, and there's going to be plenty for the old shred fans on there. But my usual, hopefully, decent thread of melody and songwriting.
Beautiful, man. Fantastic.
Yeah. So we'll go to Italy. February 16th we start. 17th we do about 10 shows. One in Austria, the rest in Italy. Then we go to.
A student of mine is coming to see you in Verona. So.
Oh, nice. Please have him say hello.
I will definitely. Yeah, he's a fan. So.
Oh, right on, man. I knew I had a fan somewhere. Hey, found him. No, so then we'll go to Southeast Asia in March. We've got some
Fantastic.
shows in Japan, China, Taiwan,
Oh wow. Okay.
and Thailand. So
You
I've
like
been.
being on the road, by the way?
Well, I like the shows. I like the people. I like the
But yeah,
food. I like being home.
yeah. I'm the same,
So
man. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's not a natural lifestyle at all. And I've done it a lot of my life, and there's a reason that people have problems. Drugs, alcohol, just it's that other 22 hours of the day, man.
Yeah.
It can be maddening and monotonous. But I'm still willing to do in bits and sections, you know what I mean? Because it is so important. And but my first thing, I love to play the music with my band. I love everybody we meet. All the people are so kind and loving and sweet to us. And the culinary adventures are
Oh
quite a big draw. We're going to Italy. I'm going to have some good coffee, and fresh whatever. So, but yeah, as far as being, I unless it's a really great situation, and being able to be done on a comfortable level, it's not my priority. My priority really for the rest of my life, I'm 61. My priority will be to just keep trying to improve as a musician and a writer, and
Mm.
hopefully be more prolific. I've been a little stingy with releasing music. I write a lot of music all the time, but then I have trouble being happy enough with things to eventually let them go. So
Okay.
that's my goal, is to hopefully just leave more music behind. I still want to get out and play for people. If Paul McCartney calls, okay. Or Satriano, whoever wants to to do a tour together. There's those things that, but to just to slug it out day after day,
I know
it's
what you mean.
not.
It's
I don't
heavy.
think it's not the healthiest thing for me. Some people thrive on it. I know some people that are just on the road all the time, but I do enjoy having a home life. I love my wife. I love my son, and it's always been about balance, especially after my son was born. Who's 20 now.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So it's I'll keep balancing, but yeah, touring is challenging.
I just wanted to, speaking of touring, I wanted to ask you, how do you stay? I had this situation, let's say, my longest tour was like not even close probably to your longest tour. It was
Yeah,
17 gigs in 17 days.
that's a
But
lot.
like on gig 10, I was already like, shit. I was sick of myself, of my sound, of my playing. I mean, how do you cope
Yeah.
if you have such situations? Like,
Yeah, I think that's just a normal human thing, especially as an artist, I think for a lot of us, it's very normal to be a little tired of
mm,
what we're doing. You know what I mean? And the only real remedy is hopefully if you're with a band that knows how to
yeah,
change things. And my band's the same way. There'll be certain things that are improvised every night, but there's certain things that I like. There's certain solos on certain records that I've composed everything about it, and I have no trouble playing that,
playing it, yeah.
because I will play it in the moment, and it will be from my spinal cord. It'll be real and in the moment, and that's the compositional part of me. But then the improvisational part loves that fresh thing. So, and fortunately, my band is comfortable either way, and they hear where I'm going to go, and they know what the potential is, and so it's important to have those moments that are different every night, and to try to change things and to push things. That way, you're actually exercising that part of us that need to feel fresh and
Mm,
new. But as far as any advice, it could be just as simple as learning a little melody or a little lick from somebody that maybe you always wanted to learn but never got around to it, or you hear something fresh. I got this Jonathan Kreisberg. It's just a pattern. It's definitely like an augmented, altered pattern.
hmm
I'm gonna go later today to learn it because I want that. It's like something that I don't really have a lot of. There's some of those hip jazz patterny things that you recognize it for what it is, but at the right moment, it's just exactly what you want to
mm,
hear. I was like,
yeah,
you get a little bit of that. So that's really one of the easiest and best things, because then if you can somehow implement that in your gig that night, you're gonna feel like $1,000,000. Like, yeah, I really. But sometimes
yeah, yeah.
it's like learning a language. So sometimes it takes a while for it to feel natural in a sentence, to actually be able to communicate whatever the new thing is. But that's always a rut buster. Just one little bit of something. You don't have to transcribe Coltrane's Giant Steps in its entirety. You know, it's there if you want it, but get the lick, get the thing that of all the stuff. What was the moment?
Mm,
What was that just drew my attention and made me feel something? Try to get those little bits and see if it can add up into a unique and new moment,
yeah.
because those are the ones of course, we're more tired of hearing ourselves than anybody. But when you can do something for yourself like that, that can be ultimately rewarding and just kind of encourage you to step through that door a little bit more, you know. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah. Cool, Andy. Well,
Yeah, man.
I will not bother you anymore. But
No, dude, I feel like I mean this sincerely. Like, you know, let's just say I've done a few of these,
yeah,
and
exactly.
there's the rare occasion where you sit down with somebody and say, we could be here another 5 hours. And so
Or
no,
a
I
glass of
appreciate.
wine next time.
Oh, yeah, next time, I'll come to Slovenia. Come
Oh
on.
man,
Or if
we
you
have
ever
a
make
guest
it.
room here, man. So you know, we live in a wine region. Really, we're on the top
Oh
of the hill
no,
here.
that's
Yeah.
a great problem. Yeah, we've got a guest room here too. So no, let's do this again in the future. Well, let's do part 2 because I had my coffee. Maybe I was too chatty, but
No, it's all about you. That's why I wanted to do it. So
well,
thanks so much for
I
finding the time, man. Appreciate it.
I appreciate no, and sorry about having to
Oh,
reschedule
no worries.
after our last things.
No worries.
Life happens, as they say. Things get busy,
Yeah.
and things are crazy right now. But I'm very happy to meet you and very happy to chat with you.
Me
And
too.
again, it's nice when it's just a natural thing. And
Yeah.
we went down some paths that maybe not everybody thinks to ask, or you know. So this,
Yeah. Yeah. I
I like.
really wanted to ask you some of these things because I
Thank you, man.
got some amazing answers today. I'll re-listen to your records. Like shit, man. Really.
All right.
But yeah,
Hey,
beautiful, man.
I want to close with one quick
Sure.
thing. So, and again, this goes to if you just change one little thing, it might open up a whole other door. There's been so much information and content done on picking techniques,
Yep.
like Troy Grady. Have you seen his videos about
No.
pick slanting and ways of
Oh
you
yeah.
know
Yeah.
economy picking and all these things? I'm not good with economy picking, even though I do some of it naturally. I've always been more of a my first note's always a down is always a
Yeah.
down
Me
pick.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a very rhythmically inclined, but you know, and you hear people say, "Well, try starting with an up pick." So when I practiced earlier today, at the very end of the practice session, I just start. Every phrase I play, I'm going to start with an up pick. It changed my brain. It changed my tone. It changed my melodic ideas. Just try it. I'm okay. I'm not because I even asked a violinist I had coffee with earlier. I bet when you pick up the violin, it's always a downstroke. Absolutely, that's just our inclination. But
Natural. Yeah.
what if you start the other way, and you just might open up a door you have no idea. Because I can't wait to get back on the guitar later today because I think it's a thing. Because of course the tone's already going to be different.
Sure.
So after playing 3 note per string, modes from my school days, start with an up pick, and it made more sense. And it felt better. It's like, what? I've been doing it. Well, it's not wrong, but it's like, okay,
Different.
now I got a whole other side of things and again, it's just that one little thought. What if that's all it takes. So take that little nugget and
Yeah, oh man, there's too many nuggets to chew on. It's just like every time I pick it, it's like Bill Frisell.
oh,
I'll just share this with you. Like I saw him on a gig play a G chord, a G
yeah,
major,
yeah,
and it sounded like like
yeah,
wow. And then I came
yes,
home. That was like 20 years ago, and I played the
yeah,
same chord, and it sucked. It was just like a
yes.
Bob Dylan. Nothing against Bob, but
No, 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 no.
it's
But
like a folky G
it's
chord. And
tuning.
I was like, man,
It's tuning. It's
you know,
so much as tuning with that. By the way, I guarantee it. What you felt was likely, but also tone and knowing exactly how to.
yeah,
I had the
bending
same
the neck,
experience.
and it's like,
Well, there you go. So, but that's it. How can you play the most simple things but have them mean the most?
yeah,
That to me is the mark. That's Bill Frisell. That's why he's Bill Frisell. He's one of the great purveyors of tone and taste, and because he can do that to you, he can play that G chord and it means something.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to know giant steps in all 12 keys, but man, if you can play that G chord in tune and make you feel that,
Oh man,
that's brilliant.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah,
Awesome, man.
cool. Andy, enjoy the tour in Italy and
Thank
the
you,
food and
thank you.
everything. And
And I'll send you the record.
oh, please do. I would
You
love
check
to
it
hear
out.
it.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
so much.
No
I
problem.
hope we get to meet live one day and just have a
I
glass
think
of wine or
I think
whatever, or beer or
coffee or whatever.
whatever.
Yeah.
So
All
cool,
right.
man.
Slice of pizza.
Yeah, exactly. Stay
Thanks,
strong.
Samo.
Thank you.
Really great to see you, man.
You too.
Cheers,
Bye.
buddy.
Ciao.
Bye.